women, after about 6, 7, 8 years of work, when you really have a family and children, have to step down. You meet a lot who've actually had to do it. They have professional aspirations, but they've had to do it because of the absence of a support mechanism.
Hello and welcome to Moneycontrol presents Women in Power, where we feature boss ladies who are influencers who crack the code of success by being unapologetically themselves. We are in conversation with Sumeet Singh, mother of two and Chief Marketing Officer, InfoEdge Group. Sumeet, first up I want to ask you, was InfoEdge always a dream you had for yourself? How was the road like and what was the most exciting seasons of your corporate journey?
So InfoEdge wasn't a dream, I was doing something very different from what I'm doing today. I was actually the executive director for the Indus Entrepreneurs and the Indian Venture Capital Association. So a very, very different world from marketing really. And my daughter actually was turned 1, and it was a very high, it was a high pressure job. I loved my job. There was a lot of traveling involved, and I felt I need to kind of now do something with more flexibility. And that's when I knew Sanjeev from Thai, and I stepped down from Thai, and I used to live in Noida, and InfoEdge was in Noida. And that time, not all the businesses that we see today. It was primarily Quadrangle, Naukri and Jeevan Sathi, 99 acres hadn't been launched, and Sanjeev said, we're looking at somebody who can actually head strategic alliances and corporate communication. So why don't you come and, come for an interview? And my boss, who's Hitesh Oberoi, is somebody who I've been reporting to right from the beginning, and it was a nice interview. It was more like a conversation, and I said I would like to come on board actually on a retainer because I want some flexibility. And so I started my journey with InfoEdge like that. It was strategic alliances, Corpcom, but it's been wonderful, And after a year in it, I felt that I've done what I had to do over here. I've set up the department. We've kind of got a good roadmap. We've built a team. And I went up to him to say, I think my job's done and I would like to now move on. And to my surprise, actually, Hitesh said, would you like to head marketing? And I said, yeah, but I don't know this world of CPC and CPL and impressions because I didn't come from an online world. And those were early days, So digital was not all around like it is here, and InfoEdge has always been on the forefront of a lot of things in marketing and product. They were pioneers in a lot of fields. And I think it was his confidence. He just kind of said, you know what, Sumeet, you're good with numbers. I think you have an analytical mind. Ho jayega tujhse. So I said, are you sure? Because, and there was a lady who was heading marketing, which I didn't know that she was on her notice period. And I think, so a lot of it, I think I give the credit to InfoEdge because they're the ones who actually had the confidence and said that, why don't you take it up? And we both agreed that, okay, for 6 months, let's kind of do it as a trial. Let's see if it works out, because neither was I sure. I think they had more confidence and I didn't. And then, things just moved one thing to the other, and here I am today, as the CMO. So I think, looking back, I'm so glad that I got that opportunity, and I'm so thankful to both Sanjeev and Hitesh, And it's a wonderful company, and it's been a lovely journey.
Sumeet, you had earlier said in an interview that most of our decisions are data-driven. So where does your creative instinct or gut kick in?
So I think, yes, being an internet company, we have hordes of data, and so a lot of the starting points I would say would be data. So we look at, as a company, we have a lot of data on what consumers are doing. So whether it is a matchmaking site, Jeevan Sathi, or whether it is Shiksha, or whether it is Naukri, we can see what the recruiters are looking at. We can see what the job seekers are applying to. We can see how people are engaging at different pages of the site or the app. Now a lot of traffic is actually on mobiles. So I think a lot of starting point is actually data. So we look at data, look at trends. That gives us a sense of what is really happening. Is there a problem? Are there some insights, which one can use? And then in my field, which is marketing, you're trying to then solve certain problems, right? Now, while there's data on the site, there's also a lot of consumer work that we do. Me and my teams, we constantly try and talk to clients, we try and talk to consumers to get to know, what are people going through, what are people thinking, and every individual is different and has different aspirations, right? So what we do together, I think, as a team at InfoEdge is look at data carefully, drive insights from there. But then I think functionally, when different functions have to decide their solutions and what can be done, there is a lot of gut and creativity that has to come in, right? Because data doesn't give you the solution. Data actually shows you what's happening. What are the insights that are throwing? What are the trends, right? And then the solutioning, I think that is where creativity and gut and all comes in, because data doesn't really throw out a solution. And then what is wonderful in this organization, and I'm sure it might be in a lot of others as well, is that whatever we do, we try and measure the effectiveness. So before we do anything, even things like branding, brand campaigns on TV, etc., etc., we kind of, as a team, are pretty clear that let's, after this, measure these 2-3 metrics and see what impact it has had, right? So as a company, I think we're more quantitative, and we believe in impact should move some needles in data, and then only can we really say that it has had an impact. And I think that's been really wonderful, because that keeps you, first you're a little more accurate, your insights are more accurate, you're looking at many more people and seeing what they're doing. Qualitatively, you meet only a couple, right? But when you look at data, you can actually see that, my God, 1 million people on the platform are doing this, right? So that's where it all kind of fits in and sets in.
When it comes to roles in an organization, we often hear chairman, but we seldom hear chairwoman. Does it ever bother you? Like, when you are one woman out of those 500 men, have you ever approached work, through a gender-biased thinking?
No, I'm going to answer it in 2 states. It has never bothered me why not chairwoman, because I think wherever there is a woman who's chairing a position, you very often now hear chairperson. So, I mean, I kind of find that wonderful, because you hear a lot of terms now where the term from chairman has changed to chairperson when there's a woman there. And I think we can't push for more than that, I mean, that's a nice change in itself. I think it will change when we see many more women in those positions, right? As we see many more women coming into boards, etc., it is only then when it will become colloquial, right? So chairperson, I think, is a good progress. No, I've never really thought of it from a gender perspective, and I've also been very lucky. I've done very diverse things in my career. I started with sales from my MBA campus job, was with NIIT in sales. Got into policy work with CII, where I really learned what lobbying is and what policy is, and at a very young age got very good exposure to, I worked with the 10 northern Indian states to set their IT policies. I was in their committees, worked very closely with very good leaders, whether it was people like Saurabh Srivastava, FC Kohli, Narayan Murthy, even Michael Dell, Bill Gates, and those times, because those were the times IT was kind of becoming big in India, which was the 98-99 period. And when at a young age, you're very in awe of them, right? Because you've only actually seen their interviews or read about them in business magazines, right? When you start sitting with them, a lot of them really surprise you, because the first thing what surprised me was that a lot of them actually were very humble and grounded. They had their feet on ground. Out of business school, 2 years in work, you feel, wow, this person, but they were very grounded. When you spoke to them, you realized that a lot of those leaders that I met, and worked with very closely, while everybody has their own traits, I think meritocracy and performance was something that was the one thing that they measured everybody from. And I have seen that in my career as well. Maybe I've been lucky to be in companies where there has been no gender bias, but I see that most companies, and InfoEdge, we have a lot of women, and we don't have a diversity mandate due to which we have women. But it's very clear it's all based on meritocracy, So I have never felt the gender bias, but I have heard enough, and I do know that it exists. I've been lucky, I think, that I have not seen it with me, but I do know that there are enough places where it exists, and enough women who have to go through the gender bias after a certain point of time in their career, But I think it more comes from peers rather than actually the top.
Sumeet, there's one thing which we all look in our jobs, like different people have different perspectives. But what is that one thing you are looking for? What are you in it for?
I think two big things that have always kept me going in any of the jobs that I've taken. One is it challenging enough, you know? And when I say this, it's more importantly, is it challenging to me, you know? So whenever where we're working, there will always be some business challenges that we're supposed to solve, right? And that will exist whichever vertical you go to, whichever, as you said, whichever position that you're in, there will always be some challenge or some problem at the business level that you're really solving for. But for me, it's really been, my God, can I do this, you know? So when I went from a sales job to policy, it was like I didn't know anything about policy, right? So it was a big challenge. From policy, when Saurabh actually told me, no, I think you can do Thai, I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship really, and nothing about venture capital at all, you know. But I took it up as a challenge, and I think I've been very lucky to have very, very good managers and bosses, because they've really been very, very encouraging. You know, similarly, when Hitesh gave me this opportunity and I said, Hitesh, I don't know all this, you know. He said, no, you'll do it. You learn from YouTube, you learn and open an account on SEM. And he was very kind enough. In the first year, I would go to him with every little thing, and he had the patience, you know. So personally, I feel that if you have the right managers, they can facilitate a lot of things for you, you know. I've been lucky not to have judgmental managers, right? Because if you're judgmental and your perceptions are very strong, then you don't give people enough chance and opportunity. So for me, I think the driving force has always been that, does this challenge me as an individual, you know, in my professional capacity, in my personal capacity, will it be challenging? And therefore, everything that I've done has been really in that spirit, you know.
I want to dig deeper and know you more. Sumeet, what about those times when you feel the pressure's too much or you can't take it anymore? Or maybe those moments where you feel too overwhelmed. How do you get past that?
There have been many, not one. You know, as a mother of two, you know, and both my children actually have a large gap. So my son and my daughter are 7 years apart. Yeah. So just when you think your child is getting independent, and you know, with years is where you rise in your career. Then comes a little baby again, and that means as a mother you now need to go back to diaper changing, and you need to give more attention and stuff like that. So, and then in the recent past also I've had, you know, some things in the personal life that have been disturbing. So many a times have I felt that I should actually drop everything. Many a times have I questioned myself, am I doing the right thing? I think as a mother, there are always these times when you feel very guilty, you know, as a working mother, you know. You feel, is this worth it, you know? Isn't it better to be home and paying attention to the child? So there have been many, many moments. I think I have turned to my spouse. And I'm very, very lucky that I have a very, very supporting husband, you know. I don't think a lot of us, if we've reached here, we could have reached without supporting in-laws, supporting parents, supporting spouses. So, and he's always been very encouraging, because he's never pushed me, and he said, whatever you decide, I'll be fine by it, you know. I think that for a woman is very important. A lot of the young girls you meet also, a lot of girls say we want to be working, right? But they don't necessarily want to marry a man who says you should always be working. You ultimately want to marry somebody who says, I'm okay with your decisions, so that when you want to work, you can work, and when you don't want to work, you don't work. So I drew a lot of strength from him, and I continue to do so. The other thing is, I've actually had 2 or 3 very good mentors, you know. I won't say that I've been going to them regularly, but whenever I am at crossroads, or whenever I'm really overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, there are 2-3 people who I have picked up the phone and spoken to. And 2 of those people actually happen to be women who are doing very, very well. You know, I don't want to name them. And when you hear women who are doing very well and you're in awe of them, you do hear that they've also gone through this, but they've got over it, you know. They also have kids, and they've also had their moments. And I think that is what has really made me go through. So the moments do come. I won't say they don't, you know. But my dad was in the army, and I think one thing that his upbringing has instilled in me is this muscle of resilience. And I think it is that muscle of resilience that has really helped, you know, and will continue to help hopefully in the future as well.
Well, it's a fact that mostly women are asked about their work-life balance. Like, I don't remember the last time a man was asked that. But it's true, women are multitaskers at many levels. So how do you deal with the work-life balance?
It's not very easy, you know, and there are times when I've really thought that, is this worth it? You know, the kids are getting, you know, they're growing up. My daughter's in 10th now. And you feel that just being present there is going to be more important, not that you're going to sit and teach them. So it hasn't been easy, but as I said, I'm very lucky we live with our in-laws, and I have wonderful in-laws, you know, so the support mechanism is very nice. I also feel that the organization that I am in, which is InfoEdge, is a very humane organization. So while we don't really have policies on flexibility, and we don't have different policies for women and different policies for men, and I think that's what I actually like, because I would not like to be in a place where women are treated differently and men are treated differently. But what is nice is, if you have humane people around you, they understand, you know, they understand that there is a PTM. Having said that, there are always days when your kid is with 104 fever, but there is a very important review in office and you have to go. So I think those are things that you have to just live with, and you tell yourself, if both things are important, how can I make the most of them, you know? And each of us has our own way to balance it in our lives. But I don't think there's anything called work-life balance actually, because thanks to the mobile phones and now smartphones, you're working 24/7, because you know, there are mails on the phone, people can access you anytime, and similarly you can, which I feel has advantages and disadvantages. So, you know, so really speaking, you're wired all the time and you're accessible all the time. So it's just managing, because I think the environment is supportive, you know, every time something is really, really required, you can go up to the, you know, to your bosses and say that this is what I'm going to do. So,
being in a position like yours, where all the eyeballs are at you, talk to us about how a professional like you dealt with pregnancy. Talk to us about the moments pre and post motherhood, where you were tackling two beautiful babies as well as work, which is no end.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. Okay. Well, my daughter is going to be 15, so I'll have to go 15 years back. Huh? Okay, yeah. So my first pregnancy, I was actually not in InfoEdge. I was with Thai. Yeah. A wonderful organization, an organization that a few of us built right from the beginning, and I had the, you know, I mean, I had the privilege to be in the founding team. So we used to say, we are the CEOs and we are the peons. It's, you know, so we did everything. So first pregnancy, actually, touch wood, I didn't have any complications in my pregnancies. I worked all through, you know, right till very close to having the baby. My mom actually said, yeah, you're okay, but take a week off and relax. And I was like, no, I can work till the last day, you know. And she said, I know you can, but you must take this, because afterwards you won't have periods of rest. And I am so glad I took that advice. And I tell everybody in my team or women I come across, just take those 10 days off and pamper yourself. So I did the spa, and I went to the parlor, and I went to all the lovely restaurants that I had before the baby came in. And of course, the pregnancy itself was 36 hours of labor, so it was like really, really long. And I came back to work on the 43rd day, I remember, you know, and at that time maternity was 3 months, but we were a very small team in Thai, but like a family. A lot of flexibility, you know. So when you're a very small team, we were just 3 actually, we were 2.5. Yeah, and but you could come back, you could go back. So I had the flexibility to go back and, you know, feed my child. Office was in Friends Colony, home was in Noida, so the distance wasn't much, and the traffic was not as bad as it is today. So I would come home 2-3 times, you know, to look up the baby. Sometimes I would work from home for the second half of the day. You know, people would just come in here. So the first pregnancy, I went back on the 43rd day, had a very supportive environment, and everything worked out very, very well. And even at office, people were very sweet. My boss had said, if you, even when I used to go and travel because I was also looking after Venture Capital Association and SEBI was in Bombay. So there were periods in time when one had to stay in Bombay for a week or 10 days. But they were very sweet, they said carry your maid and your kid along, doesn't matter, So that was easy and that's why one did it. And I have a wonderful mother-in-law, so she's always been there. So whenever there was a big event or a big conference, she would just come. We in those days used to do a lot of our events in Moria, yeah. And so my boss was very kind. He said, take a room here, because you're in Noida. And my mom-in-law would come with me with the baby, and so the baby was always there. Yeah, so that's how I actually managed. And the second pregnancy also was not a complicated pregnancy. I was at work till maybe 4 or 5 days before I delivered my baby. And of course, I took all the 3 months because now we had a team. It was a larger team, and I was in Noida, so a lot of things could happen just from the house. So I really didn't have a problem. And when I joined back, I think when you join back as a new mother, whether it's your first baby even more, there's a lot of things that you're going through. One is this big guilt that you're coming back, and your baby requires you. And more than that, I think it's also this withdrawal symptom that you have as a mother, because there's this tiny little life who's been clung to you, from the day the person has been born. And, so literally your life is revolving around that baby. And that baby is so dependent on you. You've never really experienced anyone being so dependent on you, and we forget that phase of our babies when we were babies, that we were so dependent. So it's also a lot of withdrawal symptom. It's not only actually the fact that you're leaving the house after so long or feeling guilty. It's also that whole thing of the warmth, the hug, but even when I joined, the second baby I had, I was in Info Edge, and actually Hitesh asked me, would you like an extension? Are you joining after 3 months? And I said, no, I'll take an extension of 2-3 days and join on a Monday, because I think technically I was supposed to join on a Wednesday or a Thursday. But I would go back home. So I always had the flexibility. I would go back home for an hour in the afternoon at lunchtime to go and see my baby. I also had, house was close to office, so it's doable. But at Info Edge, we have a creche, which actually Sanjeev opened many years ago because one lady was going to quit because she could not come back from, maternity, because she did not have a support mechanism. Not all of us are lucky to have it. And he said, we'll open a creche for you, So if you're working with an organization like that, where people understand people, I think it's not as tough.
I want to take that forward and ask you, what kind of support do you think every organization across the board should offer to every woman professionals who just became new mothers?
I think it's very, very important. And the reason why a lot of women are not reaching the top, the primary reason is not because we don't have enough women who are intelligent or we don't have enough women who are professional. The thing is that when you don't have a cohesive environment that understands the need, every man has to understand that woman is a mother to his child, right? So I think if you have that kind of empathy, you don't need sympathy, you just need empathy. Women, as you rightly said, are multitaskers. All of us, I think, are conditioned to be very, we're overly cautious, because we feel that there are biases that the male world already has. कि यार ये तो अपने बच्चों में लग जाएगी या ये घर के कामों में लग जाएगी. So there are some biases which are untold and unspoken, right? And I think all of us as women, irrespective what stage of our careers or our age we are in the professional world, we know that these unspoken biases are there, and most of us are very, very cautious, therefore, that nobody should finger point at them, right? And we therefore stretch more than maybe what is required, right? I feel that it is very important for organizations to understand this. It is important because you're giving you want your children to be well brought up, and why can't you give a little bit of flexibility? I think that understanding is important. Unfortunately, it's not available everywhere. Just a creche is not important. You have to have that mindset, right? It's not about I've given you a creche now for 10 hours, everything should be okay. You need to go and look at your baby in the creche. There will be days when your baby will not be well, you know. And because it's not there, I think that's why a lot of women, after about 6, 7, 8 years of work, when you really have a family and children, have to step down, you know. So some make that conscious choice and it's okay, you know, it's easy to live with, but you meet a lot who've actually had to do it. They have professional aspirations, but they've had to do it because of the absence of a support mechanism. And therefore, I feel that it is very, very important for organizations to kind of feel so. And I echo with what Sheryl Sandberg wrote in her book Lean In, that we as women, specifically in middle and senior roles, have to create that environment for other women to lean in, you know. So as women who are working, I think it is our duty to try and influence something like this in our circles of influence. You know, everybody cannot influence policies of an organization, of your company, but can you do it in your teams? Can you do it in your immediate circle of influence? Can you at least understand and, you know, provide that comfort, you know, that flexibility? And I'm telling you, I've seen it time and time again. When you do that, those women actually perform far, far more better because they inside just feel so obligated. We're just conditioned like that as women. You know, a lot of things we don't feel is our right? Because we're conditioned like that, right? To, you know, I mean, it's sad, but that's the way women are conditioned. We shrink ourselves. We don't really, not too many of ourselves, too many of us actually stand up and say we are experts and demand. So we feel obligated when things are done, which should also change, I feel. We shouldn't feel so obligated. We should feel it's our right, but it's something that is deep-rooted and will take time, you know.
So what kind of advice would you want to give to your younger self, Sumeet?
I think I actually would just say, hey, you've kind of done quite well and, you know, keep at it. And I'm quite proud of the decisions that I took, because a lot of times when I was changing industry, a lot of people said you won't be able to grow, you know, because if you've done sales, then stay in the sales mechanism or go to marketing. Now, if you're doing policy or if you're doing the not-for-profit sector, you know, stay here because here is where you will rise. This is the experience you have. But I think I've done quite okay, and so the advice would just be to carry on.
As we come to the end of the conversation, I want to take you out of the boardroom and enter your kitchen. What are your favorite indulgences?
Well, my size will tell that I'm a foodie, you know. So, oh yeah. So, if you're taking me to the kitchen, then what I really love is spaghetti and hot chocolate fudge sundae. That is, yeah, I just love these two things, you know.